Welcome to the Trent Wilbanks Podcast Show.
Awesome. Very, very excited. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is episode 4. I am thrilled to have with me, live in person, a good friend of mine, Roary Hutt. Roary, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Trenton. We're looking forward to our conversation.
Me as well, Roary. Mostly because I met you through a friend of mine, and you have that entrepreneurial drive. You have that spark in your eyes, and I know that you help people become better than what they're originally capable of, and you've helped me grow as a person and with a little bit of life coaching. And I know that whenever I wanted to get you on the show, that we were just going to have a big discussion about mindset, because that's something that we discuss for hours on end. And before we get into all that, I want to keep this condensed and short. So I want people to get to know you first. So Roary, let me ask you, who were you in high school?
Who was I in high school? I was an introvert. I didn't really do much of anything. I was one who kept to myself but made friends with everybody. It was an extraordinary experience. Just people naturally gravitated towards me, and I couldn't figure out why that was. But,
were you athletic or anything?
no, I ran track, but ran that 200-meter. After about that first 100 meters, and as I watched everyone else finish, I decided it's about time that I retire my cleats, and so that was the end of my athletic career as a student. Just extracurricular activities, martial arts.
I remember you saying earlier before we went live that you did VOTech, and you said that you did not really enjoy high school. Why was that?
Just the schoolwork, studying. I didn't realize there was a benefit behind that, and so I was just winging it the entire time.
And where did you go to high school at?
Salina South, Salina, Kansas. Beautiful, beautiful town.
That's awesome. So what exactly brought you to Missouri?
Relationships. The thing that'll drag you anywhere is you meet that right person and it will pull you in that direction. So that's what brought me out in this direction.
That's incredible. So going back previous, before high school, you're growing up, you're a little kid. What did you always go to when people ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I always said an archaeologist. It just always sounded interesting to me.
What's interesting about that?
Just digging things, just going and finding history. It just sounded awesome.
You get to read lots of books. You don't really need to talk to many people until you find something. Okay.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So archaeology, is that what you ended up falling into after high school?
No. In fourth grade when they ask you what do you want to do and you say archaeologist, that's pretty much the extent of it. They have you look up some stuff, but they never draw the conclusion of like, hey, this is what you need to do to get there. So I ended up studying auto tech in high school. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I got an oil change that I might need done. Do you charge for that?
We had to retire from that industry. That just wasn't fun enough.
Okay. So you get out of high school. What field did you kind of fall into? Did you do the college game?
Did the college game, studied psychology because I realized that a lot of people needed help, and just that's what I thought you do is become a therapist if you want to help people. And so I did that for a while.
So did you actually get your degree and started helping people through psychology?
No, I still hadn't quite figured out the key to studying, so got dismissed, and then I went to work at a factory for a little while. Realized that was miserable, and then I went to my uncle's funeral, and so I ended up studying mortuary science and becoming a funeral director and embalmer.
Wow. My grandpa actually did that for quite a while. He's retired military, served in Vietnam, and then he was also an emergency responder as well as a person who worked at dispatch, I want to say. But yeah, and then he did the embalming thing for quite a while. What does it take to get into that industry? I feel like you need to have a certain type of personality to be able to see all that death and not let it bring you down.
Yeah, I don't really know how to explain that. It does take a certain kind of personality because there are a lot of people that can't handle that. But once you really understand that it's you're really taking care of someone in a really important time in their transition in life, it takes a noble kind of spirit, but also a detachment of realizing that there's not really a person there anymore. It's just a body, but you treat it with a lot of respect because there's those who are in mourning who need to see that.
Okay, so you're that cross to bear for the family that's in despair. That's actually very, very humbling. Because I was about to ask you, so what is it that kept you going through that? How long did you do that?
I did that for about 6-7 years. And it was a great passion, worked with some fantastic people, except I just didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel if I continued down that path. And so ventures took me in other directions.
Would you say that it's accurate that doing something such as being a mortician, did it ever get easier and easier because you're doing the same thing over and over again, or did you feel it kind of compound, like I need to do something before this takes an emotional toll on me and my family?
No, I never really experienced that. They say about 80% of funeral directors are alcoholics, but that's if you allow the death and everything to really affect you, and you're absorbing a lot of the emotional experience from a lot of the family. So it is a really trying kind of thing. But for me, it got easier and easier. And maybe it's just an emotional detachment in a way compared to a lot of people.
Right. If you don't mind me asking, what's probably one of the hardest days that you had in that field?
It's always whenever the mothers pick up their child out of the casket. Those are very emotionally draining times because it's such a high emotional cost for that family. And then having to witness that, that's pretty hard.
So is there any way that, and I know that life's not all sunshine and rainbows, and I'm sure people can see if you're not sincere about them guiding through this time of grief, like it's going to be all right. Like, how do you handle that situation?
The best thing is the best that you can. That's the ultimate answer to that, because different people handle things emotionally differently, but you just have to remember that you're there as a funeral director, so you have to direct the situation, not become emotionally engaged, because it falls upon you to make sure that everything goes well.
No, that's really powerful. So you don't obviously do that anymore. So how old were you when you kind of morphed into the person that you have become today?
It took me my entire life, but really the transitions came whenever I had the right situations in life to where I wanted to learn, and it was around 23 years old when the lessons started to appear, and then I was the right student to start really paying attention to those.
Was there any type of events, or was it a series of events that led to that?
Well, meeting a very wealthy man, because growing up my mother only made $12,000 a year, but then I met an extraordinary man who made about $800,000+ a year, and in my mind, I thought there's a big gap between these two incomes and lifestyles, to where all I knew was scarcity, and now I'm seeing a lifestyle of abundance. And so the curiosity was there. How do I get this? And so from that, then I was ready. But the lesson hadn't quite come yet, so I was still searching for what that is. What is it that I'm missing, the missing piece?
That's very reminiscent of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you kind of put it that way. I know it's your mom and another guy, but what would you say the biggest takeaway that you got from that experience was?
The biggest takeaway from that experience was the importance of showing up in life, because if you're not showing up, you'll never receive the lessons, because what we tend to do is when we run into challenges or, questions, we say, well, I'm just going to go figure this out. And that's kind of like reinventing the wheel. It's not necessary. Yeah, you can, but you're going to be old by the time you figure everything out. And so it's important to show up and learn the lessons and find those who have what you want, so you can start asking the right kinds of questions.
Wow, that's deep. What do you want?
What do I want?
Yeah.
My biggest thing is, and as a mortician, one of the assignments that we had is we had to go and write our own obituary. And
What?
in my obituary, what I wrote is that I want to be the type of person to where when my kids look over my casket, it's not about the money that I make, because I want to, and I'm going to become very wealthy, but it's more of the impact that I've made on other people's lives by helping them see more in themselves after we met than before. And so that is everything that in my life is geared towards, is how can I have that impact? And if I'm not having that impact, I'm not excited about life. So it's make sure that everything is in line with that. And if not, then making adjustments so that it gets back in line with that.
That's incredible.